Anthimos,
Eva,
thank you for coming onto the show.
it's my pleasure.
Excellent. So I think I may have found you on LinkedIn. As you said, you are quite infamous or famous on there.
My notoriety is getting, problematic. But it's useful. I did say in TAFE in an entrepreneurial class one day that adversity is opportunity. So people, they perceive hardship, and some people say, well, that's it, I'm going to throw in the towel. To me, hardship is just an opportunity to explore options and to get out there and give it your best go. And so,
I hear you. We talk the same language. So the reason I had you come on the show is because you experience epilepsy.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I was first diagnosed at the age of 14 and a bit. Likely was suffering symptoms of epilepsy for longer than that, but it became bleedingly obvious to everyone when I had what used to be called a grand mal or a tonic-clonic seizure, a generalised loss of consciousness with full-on convulsions in English class in front of everyone. I woke up in my father's Nissan Patrol and with the sun on my face and all my muscles all sore, my vocal cords all sore and everything all sore. I sort of try to figure out where I am. I have no memory of how I got there, and then look across to Dad, and he's grinning like an idiot. And I said, okay, I'll bite. What happened? He goes, you had a seizure. And I said, well, of course I did. He took me home, and I got taken to a specialist for all the assessments and stuff. And one of the first things I did when I got home was look at a map of Australia that had pins in it, because I was going to follow in my father's trail, because he travelled around Australia in his youth. And I realised, maybe I'm going to have to change my plans of how I'm going to travel around Australia. And so I didn't give up on the dreams, I just changed how I was going to get things done. Yeah,
it sounds to me like you're a pretty flexible person that tests out new ground.
But, there are two forensic psychiatrists and independently say otherwise. I've been assessed as rigid and inflexible. But I don't think rigid and inflexible is necessarily a bad thing when it comes to having principles and values, sticking up for civil rights and responsibilities. So I try to be flexible. I try to be agile. It's a constant effort. It probably makes my brain itch a lot more than I'd care to admit, but that's the opportunity, as I say, in life. When you have adversity, you can see it as an adversity. Heck, years ago, I remember saying on Facebook about when life gives you lemons, plant an orchard. No, don't just make lemonade, like plant a whole orchard. Then you can have more lemons, right? So there's always opportunities. So that's my philosophy, and I just try to make sure that I make the best of the opportunities that come along, and if there aren't opportunities, then create opportunities.
Hear. I love it. You brought a friend here, Amber.
Yep.
Can you speak about the help that she gives you?
Well, Amber inherited the role of my assistance dog from my first assistance dog, Lily, who was the runt of an unwanted litter destined for a bullet nearly 10 years ago. And I said, no, she's not. Take me up there and I'll adopt her and look after her. At the time, I had a friend say to me, you're practically homeless, how are you going to look after her? Well, Lily became my near constant companion in life from her whole life. And then a couple of years ago, while Lily was still about but getting older, I figured it was time to get another hound to be able to train up and prepare for the inevitable. Never gets easier, but that's what life is. And so we got Amber when she was 5 months old, and she's basically makes sure that when I'm busy being an idiot, that I'm safe while being an idiot.
I love it.
I had a couple of constables actually, I think it was at Caulfield Railway Station, when I had both Lily and Amber with me. They said to me, but Anthony, what do the dogs do for you? And I said, well, unconditional love mainly. And the two officers burst out into tears. I didn't mean to make them cry, but I was just being honest. It's a lot of people, when they're going through any chronic illness or lifelong condition, they probably know more than most that the stigma and discrimination is what is more problematic. I've met a lot of people in my life who express frustrations with epilepsy or any other condition that they've had, not because the condition itself was debilitating, even though it can be, but the attitude of society is extremely parochial and paternalistic and, dare I say, insulting and degrading. We're expected to either be some sort of Olympian god or goddess, or a complete and utter cripple and invalid, and society, for some reason, is unable to countenance that persons with disability are persons. We can be champions in our own right, and we can live independently. And as I said to my landlord out in Hamilton the one year, Mr. Kiprio, and to his daughter Maria, that living independently doesn't mean you can't ask for help on your terms and receive it on your terms. And I think that's something that, unfortunately, in Australia is not something that's where it should be. We should definitely have a society that's more inclusive and accessible. The technology is there, and we've made leaps and bounds in accessible infrastructure and accessible transport vehicles and accessible technology. And somehow in the last 20, 30 years growing up, I've witnessed society become even more abusive and neglectful and spiteful and mean-spirited. So all the advances in technology and industry have been undone by the worsening customer service and social service becoming far more mean-spirited. And that's something that I refuse to tolerate. I don't tolerate it. I have a zero tolerance policy for that. Just this last month, I've had to step in front of buses to make sure they stop. And it's a bus stop, I explain to them. It's in the name, you're driving a bus, this is a bus stop, you stop the bus at the bus stop. But there's a lot of attitude in society that they get to police, oh, what's your disability? Or what's your condition? Or why do you have an assistance dog? Or, oh, but if you've got epilepsy, you just need to take medicine, right? Or you could just do this, or you just do that. And it's remarkable how quick people are to both be dismissive of the lived experience, but also offer advice in something that they tend to have no expertise in anyway, unsolicited at that. And they often, from my experience and observation, are doing it because they fear the vulnerability, they perceive someone else with that vulnerability, and then they don't make space for that person, they just start projecting their fears and insecurities. And that's something that Australia really needs to get a handle on and be less abusive and neglectful when it comes to those sorts of things.
Sure. On that note, I remember we spoke about the bureaucratic impositions placed upon you as somebody who experiences epilepsy. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I mean, epilepsy is fascinating in Australia because just for those who may not know, there's dozens of different types of epilepsy. There's a whole range of them. You can have juvenile onset, you can get it in later in life, it can be on onset from an illness or injury, it can be hereditary to some extent. There's a lot we still don't know, but one of the more fascinating flaws in the public service and social service is, even though the law very clearly stipulates that persons with disability are to be included and have appropriate supports, getting access to those appropriate supports is nigh on impossible. Here in Victoria, for instance, the supports for persons with epilepsy are inconsistent with the supports that are offered at the Commonwealth level. There's all sorts of riddled with contradictions sort of clauses. Like, for instance, I try to avoid driving not because I'm incompetent, but because why should I risk other people's lives and my own life when society has got all the modern technology necessary for me to access economy and society. And unfortunately, instead of society then making it easy for persons with epilepsy to make that choice and say, well, we'll make sure you otherwise have access to transport at a fair and equitable rate to make sure you can participate in economic and social opportunities, we have this very, very mean-spirited attitude where the public service will try to say, no, you have to have a certain level of debilitation. Really? You've got to have a certain level of impairment, and then they are riddled with contradictions.
So you can't get an access card, for instance?
No, not in Victoria. Not unless you've got to have practically debilitated, to a very low level of functionality.
Well, because I have one, and I have one because I have balance issues.
Yeah.
So you can't get one
Oh, look,
based on your epilepsy?
I'll point out, it's not just when it comes to epilepsy and social services. The stigma and discrimination with neurological conditions and mental health issues, and any disability for that matter, in Victoria is so profound that you'll get such doozies as what I experienced from the North East Area Mental Health Service at 1:30 in the morning, a mental health clinician telling me, "You're not eligible for services because you're homeless." And I said, "Well, can you show me where that says in your policy and procedures?" And so you could look it up on the website. So I did. I got my laptop out, and within 20 minutes I'd written a letter to the Austin Health Board of Directors, citing the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, citing the Charter of Patient Rights, Australian Charter of Patient Rights, and also citing the Austin Corporate Code of Ethics, all of which clearly lay out that access to healthcare is not predicated on someone's housing or social or economic status. And yet, that's exactly what the junior clinicians were trying to foist upon me. And then I've spent the subsequent year or so battling to have basic access to social support.
Last time I remember it being called universal healthcare, didn't they say that?
Well, that's
so
the thing.
Does the universe only exist for people that have houses?
That's what stigma and discrimination is. And it's not just that, it's the Australian attitude has drifted or strayed very far from what I was familiar with as a child growing up in the 90s of mateship and camaraderie and looking out for your neighbours. There was a neighbourhood watch association in practically every suburb I knew growing up. When I first moved out of my parents' place into Dandenong North, the first thing I did was sign up with the local Dandenong North Neighbourhood Watch Association. Now, people are complaining about the rise of crime in Victoria, and yet neighbourhood watch associations have got the lowest levels of membership. People are saying, "Oh, we want the police to do it." It's impossible. There are 30,000 police officers thereabouts, and that includes all the admin and technical and forensics, and not all of them are on patrol. You can't do it. If you factor in that if they are on patrol, and if they'll usually go in pairs, that means they can be in 15,000 places at any one time, assuming you want them all in one piece.
At one time.
They tend to be more functional if you keep them in one piece. But there's 5 million people living in Victoria. It's just unreasonable to expect that the police are going to be everywhere at once. It's not possible. The environmental issues, some social issues, the same. Something like 90+% of the population will insist that they want to do more and better when it comes to environmental issues. They want to do more and better when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers. They want to do more and better when it comes to violence against women. Last year in Nillumbik Shire, for reasons known only to the Shire Council and their bureaucracy, they declared 16 days of respect for women. 16 days. This year, apparently no respect. That I'm aware of, no respect campaigns. Next year, maybe you'll be lucky, Eva. But what was remarkable was in Nillumbik Shire, what got my attention to this 16 days of respect for women was the fact that I was looking down on the pavement and they'd had stencils about that big. Someone had driven around the Shire with a stencil and spray can and had sprayed on the pavement, "Respect women." Respect women. Call it out. And apparently the respect for women belongs on the ground for 16 days. And that's where we are as a society. And a lot of that is not the fault of government. No. A lot of that is the fault of the people, lacking civics, lacking pride in themselves and their culture, lacking a sense of responsibility. Is there anything else that you would like to highlight about your life and perhaps with the epilepsy as well? Well, the main project I'm working on next, since March of last year in Nillumbik Shire, I've been doing dumpster diving and setting up a food relief when it comes to reducing food waste and getting it to persons and families in need. Now that seems to be well in hand with some of the local charities who are championing that. My next goal is the housing question, because it's a common need to all of us. There's a 30-bed facility in Eltham. 1120 Main Road used to be known as Eltham Villa, was a supported accommodation facility. It's been vacant for over 2 years. And while that facility's been vacant for over 2 years, there are women and children living on the streets. There are seniors, persons with disabilities, far more profound than I. And we've got councils throughout Victoria and indeed throughout the country, even up in Queensland and New South Wales, proposing to bring in draconian move-on laws in contravention of international treaties that are ratified and incorporated into Australian domestic law at the Commonwealth and state level, in contravention of our shared values as a society. So my next project is that. I'm adamant that I'm going to either get that facility and get the lease to it, or find a way to fundraise to buy it. If not that facility, another one, because there is that much vacant housing available and speculative vacancies that there's no reason whatsoever for anyone in Australia to be sleeping rough needlessly, and certainly no reason for councils and government to be mean-spirited about it, and people to say, well, you should just get a job, or you should just this, or you should just that. And I've been doing that, and that'll be my goal for this coming year. And so hopefully, if we see each other again by next Christmas, I'll be able to have good news to report and say, that's what's happened.
Excellent. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to me, Anthimos. This has been a really good discussion, and I would like to continue it in the future.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show today, James.
Thanks, Eva. It's been great.